Well, hi. Hey, welcome everybody. Good morning. Good afternoon. Hey, really glad that you're with us. I want to welcome you to our webinar today with TopLeft, and it's about how to use Kanban boards to make project management at your MSP way better. I think we've all had some problems with project management if you're using ConnectWise or Autotask or some other PSAs. So I'm going to show you how we as how we have solved that. We are actually part of an MSP. So if you didn't know that, TopLeft actually came out of an MSP called Kerkhoff Technologies in Vancouver, pretty established MSP since 2007. And we definitely had problems with our project management, things that you probably experienced, and so we built out our own Kanban boards to try to make that sort of thing better, and solve some of those problems, and that has become TopLeft and is available to MSPs all over. So yeah, we're going to teach you how to, we're going to give you a little framework here to help you deliver those projects on time, on budget, with the team you have today. And after that, I am going to show you how TopLeft makes like the software actually makes those techniques much faster than you can actually do just if you were using a whiteboard or the wall or some other software or whatever. I'll show you what TopLeft can do to make that much faster and easier. And stick around to the end because I have a special offer to help you get started. And also, we have an announcement to make about some new licensing options. Okay, we have not announced this at all yet. We do have some customers already using this new licensing option that we are going to announce shortly. But it's good that you could come because it's actually it's kind of driven by people needing some more options for project management or service management. That works too, but kind of in a model where maybe the whole team isn't going to be using TopLeft and just some managers will, at least initially. So we've got some licensing options that will make it easier to get started in that regard, and I'll tell you about that at the end too. So I just want to do a quick tech check before we get started. Find the chat section in Zoom and type in your name and your MSP name and your region, your city or whatever. I want to hear where people are from. Look forward to seeing who's here and where people are from. And while you're doing that, I'll just briefly introduce myself a little bit more. I am Matt Fox. I am now the product manager of TopLeft. That means that I am really concerning myself with I'm concerning myself with like, what do we need to help you with as a customer? Make sure that we are building out products and solutions that really help with you. Let me just make sure that I have actually permitted the chat, because last time I did this, I didn't permit that. Yeah, seems like it. There it is. Sorry about that, everybody. Try it now. Okay, there you go. Put in your name and your company name and your region, and yeah, look forward to seeing who's here. And yeah, so I've been with TopLeft, or like Kerkhoff Technologies. That's our MSP, and since 2010 actually, so quite some time. Worked in a variety of capacities, like service management. I'm doing engineering stuff myself, software development, and project management. And now, like I said, I am in charge of where are we heading as a product in order to solve the problems that you as MSPs have. Okay, hey, thank you now for using the chat. Let's see. So we got Mike from RPM in Indianapolis. Hey, hi Mike, good to see you again. I know that you've been to a number of webinars here. Welcome again. Petra from Viadex in London. Hey, welcome from the other side of the sea there. Marlene from Viadex in South Africa. Wow, that might be a record in where we have someone from. Great to see you here. Hey, thank you. Carrie, also from RPM. Ryan from EscapeWire in New York. Erica, OA Technology in Washington, DC. Tracy from Strategic Technology in Moncton. Hey, good to have you here again. And Carlos, hey, welcome back again. Carlos from Alari. Good to see you guys. And yeah, if you still haven't done that, go toss your name in there. Okay, so let's get started here. I will have other things for you to put in the chat a little bit later. Okay, so yeah, I've talked a little bit about what what was happening at KTI. Like, why do we do this? Why do we build all this? So let me tell you about like some of the things that we had problems with our project, because it wasn't good. So some of the problems were like we had too many tickets started but not finished. Like we had 400 open tickets with only 10 techs. It's not good. Projects we didn't know what was close to being complete. It took too long to close those tickets. Customers were feeling neglected. Everyone is feeling siloed. There's no teamwork, and it just took too many clicks, too much watching that spinner in ConnectWise, because we were ConnectWise users when we're doing project management stuff. And Autotask is just the same. It has all the same problems as ConnectWise. Yeah, that was some of the problems and why we wanted to solve this. So go back to the chat. I'm interested to hear, like, what is your biggest problem? What's your biggest problem with project management? Like, what frustrates you the most? Like, I guess, what brought you here? So yeah, interested to hear that. Put that in the chat so we can see. I bet we'll see a lot of the same things over and over. You should put that in there. Okay, so while you do that, we knew about Agile techniques and Kanban from some of our experience in software development. And we thought, well, that's working okay for software development. What if we tried that for our service and our project management? And you know what? Hey, we found out that it works pretty good. And so, like I said, we're going to teach you some of those techniques now. And when we're done, if you want to stick around, I'll show you the software that helps out with it. So yeah, Mike says, yeah, the ticket management and the progression of the tickets. I think knowing how are my tickets progressing through the system, especially with view to making sure that they don't just get stalled and just stop. And Michael Henderson says, keeping tracks of dozens of different project tasks. Yeah, from different projects for various customers. Yeah, that is the problem within at an MSP, isn't it? Yeah, you do not get to just focus on one big project and only start the next project when that one is winding down. Like, no, you're working on a dozen different projects or more all at once. So you better be able to juggle them. Marlene says, Agile does not fit in with fixed project costs. Okay, so we can talk about that at the end. Yeah, so what is Kanban? So just a brief introduction for some of you who might be like, maybe I've heard of it, or maybe I haven't even heard about it. Let's talk about what is that. Okay, so this is a Kanban board. Okay, this is the most recognizable part of Kanban, like a visual view of the work, but it's by no means the only part of Kanban. Actually, there's more ideas about it. So it actually came out of Toyota automobile manufacturing in the 1940s. So it's actually old techniques. The ideas have to do with like efficiency, reducing waste, and representing work visually, which is the board here. It has to do with like managing the work as it flows through the system rather than managing the workers. That means like letting the workers pull work to themselves when they have capacity to do so, instead of, as a manager, just pushing it and saying, hey, get this done, get this done, get this done. It's really, like I said, it's widely adopted in software development, and it is definitely becoming more known in more broadly in different industries. Like here's an example. Atlassian, you probably heard of Trello. Like that's basically a Kanban now. That's all it is. They got acquired for big bucks. That was some years ago already. Yeah, 2017. That's old news. Asana, another project management tool with Kanban boards. They went public. Like, so it's just to show this is becoming more widely known, not just in automobile manufacturing and not just in IT anymore. So why would you want it? Well, it lets you see your work in progress and limit it. I'll say a few things about why that is important. It helps you be more responsive because you need to be responsive. You're always getting new requests from customers, and so you can't just say, sure, we'll get to that in 2 months. That doesn't work anymore. You need to stop work from falling through the cracks, because definitely that can happen if all you got is ConnectWise or Autotask. You might find work that just stops moving forward and you don't know about it till your customer complains. It can help you improve the flow of work by identifying and addressing bottlenecks. It helps you stop feeling overwhelmed, communicate clearly with your team. You can adopt it in small manageable chunks, like for example, in one team, or even just just initially for the project manager and then for the other parts of the team. And now just to set your expectations a little bit, and like why are we doing this? So this is like because we found you can there's actually a lot of material that you can read about Agile and Kanban and whatnot. But a lot of it is kind of conceptual, and almost none of it that you can find is geared to specifically to MSPs, right? So can you, even if you did your own reading and teaching or whatever, it can leave you feeling like you understand only the ideas, but you don't know how to apply them to an MSP, right? So we're going to take your steps day by day, week by week, to keep everybody happy. Your clients, your team, sales, your boss, and yourself. So this is for for you when you need practical steps. Like it's not just concepts. And also for a typical MSP scale where maybe you got just five people working on 20 projects. It could even be a major MSP. 25 people working on 100 projects, sort of thing. But it's don't think this is a complete methodology. Like you're not going to throw away stuff that you've learned from other project management things, like risk management and things like that. You keep those things too. And also, if you're like working on a really huge projects, 20 people working on one project, sort of thing, this isn't for you. You're going to need more. You're going to need more structure than this. Yeah. Okay. So let's get into it. This is a cycle, okay? So this, we call this the project productivity planner, okay? So remember this, and it's structured as a cycle. You do these steps and then you do them again in a certain cycle. There's a couple options for that. I'll get to that real quick. So the elements of the cycle are, first of all, you identify your projects, okay? Then for each of the project that you need to work on somewhat soon, you're going to break down the work, figure out what do we actually have to do in order to deliver this. Then you're going to estimate those work items that you identified in the previous stage. Then you're going to assign them to the engineers. And after that, once your engineers have begun working on them, then you're just going to monitor them. Okay, so we'll get to each of those stages here. I talked about the cycle frequency. So how often do we do this cycle? It has to do, there's kind of two main options here. So you may have heard of Scrum. It's a pretty well-known Agile methodology, and it's quite prescriptive, okay? And like I'm definitely not going to tell you everything you need to know about this. There's no way. There's books written about this, but just very briefly, it has a cycle called a sprint. A sprint is a fixed length. 1 week would be common, maybe 2 weeks, but basically this is that whatever your sprint length is, that you do this cycle every sprint. You might do that if you want more predictability. Basically, you want to be able to take a certain amount of work and say, okay, this is what we're doing for the next 2 weeks, and it's not going to change. Okay, so it's pretty fixed. We're not going to accept changes to what we're doing every 2 weeks. Kanban is different. It's less prescriptive. It does not have the idea of sprints. And if you were to choose Kanban, you would just kind of do this cycle continually. You might even do it one cycle every day, but you can still structure it as a cycle, but there's no fixed length. You kind of do it as you need to do it. Basically, you want to keep things moving forward, and you want to make sure that your engineers don't run out of work ever. So you need to make sure that you're feeding work to your engineers so that they always have some queue of work. You would choose that if you want more flexibility. You want to be able to make changes anytime, not just every 2 weeks. You want to change more frequently than that. Then Kanban might be a good choice in terms of the cycle frequency. Okay, so first stage on the in the cycle there is identify projects. So what is a project here? Well, it's anything driven primarily by you as the MSP, of course. Like this compares to service or help desk work where tickets come in and really the person asking for something, like they know what they need, something specific, they need some help. Projects, your customer wants a big problem solved, and they're looking to you, not just like the whole thing, how to like technically solve the project, but also how to get it solved. Hey, like, we're going to pay you to run the project too. Anything, it's going to have multiple tasks, more likely than not, multiple engineers working on it. And you definitely need to be able to have a clear scope and an agreement about the schedule. and the cost with the client. And you are going to include any internal work, okay? Like maybe internal to your MSP, you know, migrating your RMM solution or something. Basically, if your project team is working on it, then it needs to be included, even if it's internal work. First step in how do we use Kanban here? Okay, so we're going to make what we call a swim lane for each project. Swim lane is just a term for basically like a horizontal lane here, and we're going to in the next step we'll put some on this, but actually this is the very first step for the first stage of the cycle. Identify projects. We have we've identified, you know, a CRM implementation we have to do and an email migration. Okay, so that's it. Next stage of the cycle is breaking down the work. Okay, so this is where you make the tickets and tasks that describe the work that you need to do. You like how much do you plan out? Okay, because we don't actually want to do the whole project all at once. What we want to do is just identify the next major phase or milestone of work in the project, and then we plan out that whole milestone at a time. And we're not going to, and maybe that is the whole project, maybe it's a smaller project and there's only one milestone. Okay, so then you are going to plan the whole project. But if it's a larger project with multiple milestones, don't worry about all of the later milestones. Just do the first. I'm talking about like detailed planning here. Um, just do it one milestone at a time. And the reason is okay, so who does it? Someone familiar, obviously familiar with those tech issues at a really detailed level. You know, maybe you need to get an engineer to do some of this, or if you came out of engineering and you're technically experienced, then you can do it too. You know, you're just responsible for ensuring it gets done. The really important part is that you don't miss anything, okay? Because that is the easiest way to to just totally have an unrealistic budget and find out in the middle of the project that you overlooked a bunch of things. Obviously, we don't want to do that, and so that's part of the reason why we do it like milestone by milestone is because it is. Um, it helps to not miss anything when you're doing at least one milestone at a time. Okay, so when you're breaking down the work, you know what you're actually doing is you're probably making tickets in your PSA for the project that you made. So what fields do you actually use here? I want to help you figuring out what you got to use so you don't waste a lot of effort on things that don't help. So obviously you're going to use the summary and the title. Okay, obviously you're going to fill out the description and the task list. If you use like the checklists, you want to do that. The due date, a lot of confusion about the due date. Okay, the due date is if there's a constraint imposed from outside. Um, some people have been using due dates to try to manage the work to say, like, you know, in order to keep this project moving forward, here are the due dates that we need to have for that. That is not what the due date is for. The due date is for if there's an external constraint. Like, for example, maybe your project has to do with a conference and the conference is on a certain date, so you better be done by then or even earlier, okay? Because that conference date's not moving. Or maybe you do some work for a school, like our MSP does lots of work for schools, and like school starts on a certain date, so you better have that Wi-Fi installed by that date, or you know, whatever it might be. That's for due dates. The priority in project work, you don't make much use of priority. At least at the beginning, everything should be normal priority. And also set any fields that you're actually going to use. Like, you know, the type and categorization, like type, subtype item. If you're actually gonna like maybe do some reporting on that sort of thing later, then go ahead and use those. But if they don't have a use at all, don't bother setting them. Like that's an example of waste if you're gonna do this work and then never get any value out of it later. The things that you don't set are the start date. Okay, that is pushing work to your engineers. So don't do that. Also duration, because that's related to the start date. Budget and estimate and story points. Don't do that in this step. We will do that in the next step, but don't do that just yet. And then don't assign it to anybody either, because also that comes later. Get a lot of questions about the ticket size. How do you set the right size for a ticket? Okay, tickets should be what we say is like one cohesive unit of value for a customer. Something that can be added or removed from the system or changed for a client that ideally it doesn't depend on much else. Yeah, it's definitely not possible to always eliminate the dependencies between them, but as much as you can, try to do that. Like, for example, if you were doing a whole cloud migration for a customer, including migrating their email, well, maybe migrating like specifically the virus scanning part of the email, that might be a good example of one particular ticket. Because you can move the virus scanning from like on-premise to the cloud, and it continues working to the customer, so it's valuable to the customer because it's a key part of that project. I also ideally consider that the work can be done by one technician in one sitting. Like they could sit down in the morning, they got a couple hours, they could just knock this out all at once. Okay, that's probably a good sized ticket then. If they know that they're gonna like get to a stopping point, then they're gonna have to collect more information or like wait on something else. Like if that's known at the beginning, that might indicate splitting that up into multiple tickets so that that doesn't happen for a single ticket. And then you end up with a dependency between tickets, but that's sometimes that's unavoidable. When in doubt, err on the side of two small tickets. I see people making tickets that are too big rather than too small, although certainly that has happened. One thing that you might look at to know I've made my tickets too small is if like the engineer sits down and they have a couple hours to work, and instead of working through one ticket, then they knock out like 6 different tickets. Like if that happens, then you know that those tickets were pretty closely related, and the engineer might be wondering at the end of that time, okay, like I got all these things done, does it really matter what ticket I enter my time on? If your engineer is wondering about that, then probably that would have been better as one ticket. Because inevitably they're very closely related, and they're all just kind of always going to get done at once. Definitely at most 2 days of work. Like basically no exceptions to this rule, unless maybe you're doing something that's like really experimental. You really have no idea how long it's going to take, and you got kind of a blank check for the customer to just solve this problem, whatever. That's the only exception. Other than that, always break it down to less than 2 days, 2 days of work or less. So it's like 16 hours. Sometimes I've seen lots of tickets. I think they've got maybe like 80 hours logged on a certain ticket, and when that happens, then like that's not realistic. Nobody has any idea what's going on with that ticket when it's got 80 hours there. There's no way for you to just look at that ticket on the board and understand what does this mean for our project moving forward or not moving forward. So the ticket's got to be way smaller than that. Tips for making sure that the scope is clear. Okay, really important that the engineers and the client and you all have the same understanding of what it means for that ticket to be done. So what we've found as a good technique is just making a really simple checklist. Excuse me. And we ended up kind of just asking like literally like, okay, when's this ticket done? And then we just kind of started saying in the description of the ticket, like done when, and then point form, like, hey, these 4 or 5, maybe on the big one up to 10 items that need to be done for this ticket to be considered complete. Yeah, you can certainly also use the actual like checklist function or tasks list within your PSA. That would work for that too. And the yeah, if you expect this work to be done by a junior engineer, then that checklist might describe the specific steps to be done in order to consider that ticket complete. If it's something that you haven't done much before, and you expect a more senior engineer to do this, then it might just describe the outcomes, right? Because it's the senior engineer's job to figure out how to accomplish that. So it's also acceptable if the checklist is not exact things to do, but it's more, hey, like we need these 3 outcomes, and it's the engineer's job to figure out how to achieve that. That's fine too. Just know which one, just know in advance which one you're doing. Is it more junior or is it more senior? Don't get that wrong, because you might end up giving outcomes to a junior engineer and they just spin their wheels because they don't have the foggiest idea how to even begin figuring out how to achieve those outcomes. So just make sure you use the right level for how you expect it to be done. Okay, so how do we use Kanban for the breakdown work part? Okay, so we got we made our swim lanes with our projects, and now we add a column here. So we have a column called backlog, and we make a card here. Like maybe this is like a sticky note and you just put it on the wall. You could totally do that. And one item for each ticket. And you also rank them. Okay, so they are not just in any random order here. You actually rank them like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and these are the the ones at the top are the most important. They need to be done first. So that's how you use Kanban. Pretty simple. Great. Next stage is estimating the work. Okay, so you want to be able to make decisions about prioritizing and then assigning that work. And to do that is really helpful to have an estimate. So that is like a budget, estimated hours. The PSAs call them different things, or possibly story points, so that you can make educated decisions about prioritizing these. Let me talk about hours and story points. So you may have heard of story points. Some people also call them complexity points. They have to do with the, like Scrum methodology, and a few other methods use that, but mainly like Scrum. It has to do with uh, instead of looking at just the hours you expect this to take somebody, it looks at the nature of the work to say, like, how complex is this compared to other work? Is it twice as complex as some other ticket? Is it 10 times as complex? And so these complexity points, they are not comparable between different companies or even different teams in the same company. And the benefit is that it doesn't matter who does the work, right? You should be able to just um, have your team kind of sit down and, like, if they understand the nature of the work for a single ticket, the team should be able to, like, even among junior or senior engineers, they should be able to kind of agree on the number of story points or complexity points for this work. Hey, like, this ticket seems to be twice as complex as this ticket. Definitely the hours, though, like the actual hours it will take to complete a ticket, that does depend on who will do that work. Okay, so that's one of the kind of why they're different, why you might choose one over the other. Definitely story points are more kind of a more advanced technique. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend you do that unless you're really probably educating yourself from other content on how to do Scrum, because you're all in on Scrum or something like that. Okay, so how much do we do? We're going to estimate the work that needs to be done, like, soon. Okay, so if you're doing Scrum style, then that's at least one future sprint's worth of work. Okay, because you don't want the engineers to run out of work during the sprint. Okay, so you're going to make sure that you're estimating at least one sprint's worth of work for your whole engineering team. If you're doing Kanban, that doesn't have a fixed time on the cycle, right? So you can do it as often as you need to do it to keep the queues from being empty. So if that's every day, that's fine. Or if you do more once a week, as you need to do that, that's fine too. So who does this? Well, again, it's someone who could do the work themselves, right? They got to be familiar with the project and the technology, an engineer or yourself if you come out of a tech background. And why do we separate this from the breakdown stage? Okay, like, why is it separate? Well, okay, it delays doing this work until all the scope changes are likely done. And the work that you've done before can inform the estimates that you're making now. So basically, it means that if you delay this work, then if the tickets that, like, maybe the project gets canceled, or a part of the project get canceled, and if you delay the work that you do on that project, then you haven't wasted it, because you kind of do it at the last moment before you need it. And that means that you're less likely to waste work if plans change. And like I said, you can learn from the work that's actually being done if you wait to the last moment to do it. And again, if you now do these estimates and then you find out, oh, you know what, this ends up being more than 2 days of work now that I look at it more closely. Okay, then you got to break down that ticket further. Okay, so how do we use Kanban for this? Well, now we're going to add a few columns to our Kanban board here. Okay, so last stage we just had backlog, but now we're going to have two more. One is needs estimation and one is ready. So um, the work, so when you identify a certain number of tickets that you need to um, um, that are going to be good to do in the next cycle, or to keep the queue of work for your engineers full, you bring those over to needs estimation. You don't have to handle them immediately, you can leave them there for a bit, but then you're going to do the work to actually estimate those. And when you do that, you're going to put a number on the card and you're going to pull it over into the ready column here. And then within that, you're going to, well, actually, no, you don't necessarily rank. You don't have to worry about ranking them too much when they're here, because we're going to rank that in the next stage. The next stage is assigning the work to the engineers. So this is the trigger to actually make this work get done. Okay, put it into some particular engineer's queue. Now, one of the we really need to minimize the bottlenecks here. So what do I mean by bottlenecks? Well, a bottleneck is where the most, I mean, it's where work kind of gets blocked up because it's going, there's some restriction in there. Most commonly on a MSP team like this, it's your some members of your team, and most commonly it's your senior members, because they a lot of the work depends on the senior members of your team. And so if you're at all typical, that's what you're going to find, is that if you look at all the work that is queued up for your different engineers on your project teams, your senior engineers are going to have the most, either the number of tickets or like the total estimated hours for all that, or both. Um, so we want to be able to minimize that. The key thing, before you can kind of minimize that, is you need to be able to visualize it, which is what you get out of the Kanban boards. Once you can see it, then you can start to address that. What you can do, like, so if you do find that you have a bottleneck like this, hey, you see most of this work, a lot of your work has to go through the senior engineer. A couple of things that you can do to address that are level up. Well, either kind of, there's kind of two things you can do. You can look at it from the perspective of your engineers and say, okay, my junior engineers can't do this kind of work. What do we need to do so that they can do this kind of work? Well, training and certifications for your engineers, for your junior engineers, so that they can begin to do this sort of work. The other way is to look at it not from the perspective of the people, but from the perspective of the work, and say, what can we for this type of work, can we document it in such a way as so that our junior engineers can do it? So it's, you get the same outcome, is that your junior engineers are able to do more work, but it's kind of coming at it from different angles. One is leveling up the junior engineers with training, or kind of leveling down the nature of the work by documenting it so that your juniors can do it. And honestly, you probably need to do both. It's not an either or thing there. So let's look at what tickets do we assign. Okay, well, you need to consider what's coming up in terms of the project. Is certain projects coming due, or are some projects really big, or maybe not, they're not big, but it's for an important customer or something like that. So you think about which tickets are we needing to do this, in this period, and those are the ones that get prioritized, or assigned, and then prioritized first. We also need to consider, like I said, senior engineers need to do senior work and no other work. Maybe you only have certain engineers working on certain projects, and so you need to consider that when you're assigning the current load of the engineers. And that totally has to do with the bottlenecks. It could be that maybe you've got 2 or 3 senior engineers, but among them, one of them is busy. Okay, so don't assign that person more work. If you can't, if you have the choice. Also, just their availability, right? You do need to consider that, because maybe some are doing non-project work, or maybe they're off on vacation or whatever. So consider all those things when you assign it. I should also say, assigning here is kind of a typical usage. We say it because it is easiest. Like, this is probably close to what you're already doing, and so it's easy to keep doing this method, but it's not actually the kind of pure Kanban method. What is even better is for you to actually not assign the work, to just have one big queue of work, and all of your engineers kind of work from the same queue. And when you do that, you don't actually have to assign it. As a project manager, you just order that work, and the engineers always just pull from the top of the list when they're ready to take on some new work. That's super efficient, but is very honestly, it's difficult to achieve, because you need really all your engineers have to be able to take on any type of work, not just any type of work, but work for any of the projects. Okay, so that's pretty difficult to achieve, and so we don't necessarily recommend that. But if you're interested in hearing more about that, come to one of our service webinars, which I expect I'll probably do that in October. So watch out for the notifications for that, because we definitely talk more about that sort of topic in the service webinars. Okay, so what are we doing with Kanban here? Okay, now notice when we're using Kanban for this, we have the ready column, same ready column that we had from last time, but from the last stage, but the swim lane is different. Okay, so we used to have swim lanes by the project, but now we have swim lanes by the individual engineers. Okay, so we've kind of shifted it a little bit because now we're concerned with who's actually going to do this work. Okay, so you just pick up a card and you put it in the swim lane for your individual engineers, and you rank them. Okay, so you don't just toss them in a random list, a random order here. You actually put them in the most important, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that is the order that the engineers will do them in. Notice that we're not putting anything into a calendar here just yet. I'll when we do it this way, we don't have to use the calendar to schedule out the engineer's day to tell them what to do. So I'll say a bit more about that shortly. Okay, so now we get to the last stage of the cycle, and that is to monitor the work. Okay, so now the engineers are working. They're doing their stuff. They're taking work from the ready column. And when they are ready to take on new work because they finish something, then they go and look at the top position in their own swim lane and see what's at the top there, and they would pull that over to a new column in their Kanban board, and then they would work on that until they're done, and then they go and take the next. So while you're doing this, you while the engineers are working, you are monitoring that. So it's not like the others where the other stages in the cycle where you work through that and then when you're done. Monitoring you kind of doing all the time, and in fact the majority of the time in your cycle is you're just monitoring stuff, and it shouldn't really take too much time. And I can tell you how TopLeft will help with that. We really want to be managing by exception. We don't want you to be spending a lot of time worrying about the things that are going well. We really want you to have pay particular attention to the things that aren't going well so that you can address those and fix them quickly. So what sort of things are you going to be watching for? Okay, we're going to be watching for any tickets that have due dates versus their progress, right? So if something is due in tomorrow or the day after or something, you want to know about that so you can be certain that it is going to be done. The hours logged on the ticket versus the budget on the ticket, watch for that. Long time in any particular column. Now I'll note that each column will have kind of a different threshold for when it's been there too long. But you want to be watching for that, so okay, this ticket has just stopped there. I don't know why it's just stopped sitting there. Let's talk to the engineer, figure out what's going on with that so that we can move that forward. Similarly, a long time without a time entry or a note could indicate a problem. Again, you're also looking for bottlenecks, meaning an engineer with a lot of work compared to other engineers. Things that are escalated from an engineer, you want to be aware of that. And what are some of the things that we do to resolve those? Okay, well, some things we can do are when you've noticed there's a problem, maybe you need to reassign the work to a new engineer. That can be a solution for the bottlenecks. Typically these things that you're monitoring for, they're kind of they kind of interact with each other. Like if you have a bottleneck, you'll see that as a lot of tickets are sitting in the column too long. So that kind of covers two of the exceptions that I mentioned earlier. And how do you solve that? Well, assign it to a new engineer if you can. Sometimes you just need to stop assigning work to a certain engineer if they are the bottleneck, give them a chance to work down that work in progress. Sometimes you can split up a ticket. So that's a good candidate if the ticket, like you see, okay, that ticket, I didn't know this at the beginning, but now we know that was way too big. Like that was 4 or 5 days of work. Didn't realize it at the beginning. But now we're 80% done on that ticket, and for some reason we can't get to that 20% remaining just yet. So let's put that 20% of work in its own ticket, and then that 80% that is substantially done. Well, the 80% is done. We can move that off, say that's complete, and just give the customer this one ticket, which represents the remaining work, and put that back into get that assigned later. Sometimes you just have to cancel work. Like that's fine too. If the business case is gone for some reason, maybe you didn't get to this ticket for like 9 months, and nobody cares anymore. you can cancel that. Maybe the client's just ignoring you. Certainly, that has been known to happen at MSPs. So maybe you just want to cancel it then. Okay, so now how do we use Kanban for monitoring things? So we're going to add a few columns here. So now we got a lot more than ready now. Now we have columns that all have to do with concerning ourselves with what's the next step on the ticket. So ready, the next step on that ticket is an engineer needs to have some get some freedom and be ready to start that. Scheduled means it's in the calendar because it requires some coordination with the customer. Like maybe they need to go on site or something, so they're expecting you at 4 o'clock tomorrow, something like that. Waiting means it's waiting on somebody outside of the team. Most frequently, it's the customer, but it could be a vendor of some sort, waiting on parts in the mail, things like that. Started is kind of another term for in progress. Basically, this is what we're working on now. Some people with more sophisticated workflows may have like a QA, acceptance phase where it goes to the customer and they verify that it's all good, and then eventually goes to completed. The most people don't have QA and acceptance, so you'd have ready, scheduled, waiting, started or in progress, and then completed. So you can see all the work here. Then you monitor for those problems. And if it has a problem, like maybe it's over budget, for example, then you put some sort of red indicator on it. And just to note, bring special attention to that. For Terry, it's in Terry's swim lane to say, hey, Terry, this was already over budget. Like let's make sure that we got a clear idea of what we got to do to finish this, so it doesn't go even more over budget. If something has kind of a warning, like maybe it's due in 2 days, then maybe put an orange indicator on it. Just bring it to everybody's attention to say, we definitely got to be careful that we don't get distracted with other stuff, so we can focus on this because it's due in 2 days. And yeah, notice that there's no scheduling to the calendar step. And this might be the biggest change for some of you whose method right now is to put work into an engineer's calendar, just for the sake of getting it done. I'm not talking about things that need to be coordinated with the customer, a meeting at a certain time of day. We don't do that because that this is one of the key things that led to agile ideas. Is just like we know that if you are in the your practice is to put things into the calendar just for the sake of managing the work, making sure that things move forward, that always requires, well, first of all, it requires a lot of work because you got to go out of your way to find, assign it to somebody and then find some time that's free in their calendar. So that can be a lot of work, actually. But the big problem is that when things don't go according to plan, which happens all the time, it requires even more work. You have to take it out of the calendar and then put it back into the calendar somewhere else. And that's just a whole lot of work from the project, a lot of work for the project manager. And so if we just kind of accept that, we know things are not going to go according to plan a lot of the time. So we're just going to plan less. We're going to that's where the name Agile comes from. We're going to kind of react to things more, and when we can still prioritize them, make sure that we're getting the most important stuff done first, but we're going to skip out on all this work that just results in more work because we're putting things into the calendar. Okay, that is the project productivity planner with the 5 stages there. Now, just briefly, in terms of the engineer's workflow, when they so we've seen that this work moves from left to right on the Kanban board. The engineers, they kind of work from the opposite direction when they're looking at their copy of the Kanban board. They're going to work from the right side of the board, meaning they're, actually, let me go back there. They're going to work from over here. Okay, obviously not completed, but if there's anything like in QA that they can do, they're going to do that. The reason they do that is because the work that's closest to being completed, they should just focus on getting that done, because then then you can tell the customer your work is done. There's nothing more to do, and then you can get started on something else. So if there's nothing in QA, they'll get started, and maybe they finish that, it goes over to completed, and then waiting and scheduled, you don't always have to look at those are because they're waiting on somebody. But then they'll pick off what's in the ready column there, or if they have, maybe they've got like we want to minimize this, but maybe from time to time it happens that they have 3 or 4 or 5 things that they've started but haven't finished yet. Well, then they just when they finish something, put it over to completed. Well, they still kind of go right to left, and then they still focus on whatever they already started. Okay, they don't go over to ready and just pick something new off. No, they make sure that they've finished everything that's in started, so that they're actually regularly delivering finished things to the customer. And then they take what's on the top of their own ready column, and then just regular keeping records up to date. They drag the tickets on the Kanban board, enter the time, and so on, all the regular things. Okay, so let me show you what can happen when someone takes some of these uh, methods and uses them. If one of our good friends here in Australia, or there in Australia, says James says, hey, he's loving the product. Billable time is up, backlog is down. They found that when in just 3 weeks of using practices like this, they actually got their work they considered stalled. They got it down from 35 to 17 tickets, and work that's assigned was down from 43 to 25 tickets just in 3 weeks by using this sort of technique. But I want to warn you, if you try to do this without software help, like I said, if you just do this on a Kanban board, sticky notes on your wall or something like that, it's going to be a lot of work because the PSAs are just weak at certain things. As you know, it takes a lot of clicks in the project module. In your PSA, there's no visualizations to help you with this. You can't see multiple projects at once. You don't have easy monitoring of the bottlenecks or the neglected work, and you can't order the tickets like I've described here. You could get some of these things with third-party project management software. Certainly you can do that, but of course then you lose the benefit of having just everything integrated with your ConnectWise or Autotask, which is one of their big selling points. So we were aware of these disadvantages, so that's why we built TopLeft, so that we didn't have to choose. We could have the best of both worlds. So it offers you the best of everything. Kanban boards to do all that I showed you to do. You can see multiple projects at once. You can easily identify the bottlenecks and the neglected work. You don't waste time entering the data twice somewhere because everything's comes straight out of your PSA. That also means that you already have the data that can show up on the Kanban boards. You don't have to go and start collecting it because you've already recorded things in your PSA, which means that by the end of the day, you can have Kanban boards that already take advantage of what you've already done. It's good for communication because everybody can see the work in the same way, and you can order the tickets like I've described here, just dragging and dropping them up and down in the columns. So you can also improve efficiency. Just work faster than in your PSA because everything is in front of you. Everybody sees the same data. In TopLeft, you can assign and unassigned members. You can dispatch to calendar. You can create service calls and view and enter time and notes. So the engineers will actually do it. And okay, so yeah, thanks for staying until now. Now I'll just show you a couple of examples of how you can do this, and then I will tell you about the new licensing stuff and show you how you can get started, and then answer any questions that you have. Okay, so this is a basic TopLeft Kanban board. You can see we have all these columns that I described here, columns left to right. The columns are mapped to the ticket statuses from your PSA. You can drag and drop between the columns to change it. That'll go back to the PSA and change the ticket status. You can drag and drop them up and down for the prioritization. You can see it's just easy to understand with the titles and the name of who's assigned and things like that. Really flexible. Okay, like you don't necessarily even need to use this layout of columns. You can give it as many columns as you want with whatever names you want and whatnot. Okay, so let's look at our swim lane example. So here we have an example of the project swim lane. So now each lane here is a project. So this is exactly what I demonstrated to you earlier. So we know in our CRM implementation project, here are the 5 tickets that are still outstanding here. Well, one of them we can see is complete. So it gives us really quick and easy view into where is all the work for all of our projects. And because it's not just one project, we have the second email migration here. We have some sort of system implementation here. Obviously, it's a big project that you can see here. So really good visibility into all of those things really quick. It's also great. So here's an example of the engineering, the individual engineers swim lanes. That was part of the method. You can see, in fact, the first swim lane we have here is tickets that aren't assigned to anybody. So that's where you would see, your backlog needs estimation, and then ready tickets. And so basically, your workflow here would be to take tickets out of the ready column and then assign. You can actually just drag them between the swim lanes to assign them as well. So that makes that job really, really easy. You can see what's assigned to people. And this is also the same view where you would identify the bottlenecks by seeing, comparing the engineers, just visually, very easy to see who's got more tickets and who's got less tickets, things like that. This is an example of the um, project. We're back to the project swim lanes, but now it's filtered to only show the work that's assigned to a single engineer. So this could be a really useful board for a particular engineer to know what they're working on. Or it's great for you, maybe as a project manager, you have one-on-one meetings with your engineers to discuss what they're doing that week, or whatever. And this would be a terrific view for that sort of thing. This is kind of flips that. This is back to the engineer swim lanes, but we're filtering it for only one project. So when you as a project manager are maybe in the mode of, okay, like I'm concerned with I have one major project going on right now, in addition to all the other ones, but one particularly big one, and I want to know who is working on each of these tickets in this particular project, so that I make sure that it's all reasonable. They're going to be able to get done what they need to get done. It's also really good for identifying neglected work. A couple highlights here. It can highlight things that have been in progress for too long. It can highlight due dates that are coming up, so that you know in advance. Also, your engineers can see this, so that they can deal with it before it even becomes a problem that you're aware of, because they can deal with it themselves. And also, so here's an example. These cards, these are not tickets. This is an example of how you can get a view of the whole project portfolio. So each of these cards here, this represents a whole project out of your ConnectWise or Autotask. So you can think about your project pipeline and see what's going on here, including monitoring your overall project view for problems, things that have been in progress too long, or maybe things, this orange tag here is saying this is something that we need to, um, like the start date is coming up. I think this one is warning about, so we need to be, prepared to start this one pretty soon. Also, you can do swim lanes that are based on the date when you're looking at it at the project view. So you can see, based on when are these projects starting, we have a swim lane for each week. So we know, okay, this is starting this week, this is starting the next week, this is starting the week after that, and so on. Okay, so a couple things that people have said about TopLeft when they've started using TopLeft for their project management was, I don't know, there's a lot here. Someone here from Computer Integration Tech, Scott, says the big aha moment was when I could click on the magnifying glass on a project and drill into the tickets for the project. Oh my gosh. Okay, actually, I should have mentioned that. That's what I skipped here. He's talking about this when we're looking at our project portfolio. You can actually just click on there to drill in to see the individual tickets for that particular project. Okay, really, really quick if you need to drill in. Okay, I love this one. Matthew at Kaufman IT says, it's weird that this is the exact same data in a new visual form, but suddenly everybody knows what ticket should have been closed when they just didn't with ConnectWise. I love that. Here's Dale at VersaTrust says something about they shortened their meetings by 50%. So they're saving not just from just a project manager, but their whole meeting. So they're saving their engineers time too, saving it by 50% by being able to show things in Kanban boards versus just ConnectWise or Autotask. Okay, so in order to help you guys, actually, let me first, before I tell you how you can get started, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the new licensing. So you may be familiar with our old licensing. Basically, in order to see work that's assigned to any particular member, you need to license that member. And that would be true even if they're not going to be using TopLeft. So let's say that maybe you want to get, the way that you want to get started with TopLeft is you as a project manager want to use TopLeft, but you don't see your engineers using TopLeft at the beginning. Maybe they will in a few months, but right now they're not. Well, maybe if it's you plus maybe like 7 project engineers, then you would need to get licenses for your project engineers as well, even if they're not really going to use it. So that would be 8 licenses that you would need. And that was that's worked pretty well up until now, but we've been getting feedback from a variety of customers that it would just be way simpler if you could just say, in that kind of mode that we're going to use it, I would really rather just license the project manager and not worry about it. So this is not even on our website. We haven't even announced this at all, but this is what we're going to do. Look for this in the next couple of weeks, or look for, I mean, it will be announced in the next couple of weeks, but we can set you up with this already, whether you're an existing customer or whether you're a new, you're looking to come on board. We can set you up with this kind of model already. Is we're going to introduce, so we already have a plan we call basic and standard. Right now, the basic or the standard applies to the entire account. So everybody, all your users will have the same tier, but we're going to change it so that you can mix and match. You can combine some people with basic licenses with people with standard licenses, and you can, but we're adding a new tier. We're going to call it premium, and it's going to not have the risk. It's going to be able to show work from anybody on the team, meaning you don't have to license. If you have a premium license, you do not have to license the members of your team in order to see their work. So you as a project manager will get the premium license, and then you don't have to worry. You can still see the work assigned to anybody. You don't have to bother with licensing the members if they're not going to use it. You can license them when you see that they're going to start getting value out of that. You want to bring your engineers on board so they can use the Kanban boards too. Then you can get some of them with standard plans, some of them with basic plan, whatever meets their needs the best. The premium license will be $75 a month. So let me tell you how you can get started. So we have a couple things we call the concierge onboarding. That is a 1 hour call to set up your Kanban boards with you, because we know that you're super busy, and like the last thing that you need is to learn how some new software works. So we'll just have a 1 hour call with you to set it up according to all the best practices, and so you don't have any stress. So that's $299. We also have the completed ticket challenge. So that is a 3-week boot camp for helping you to understand the practices that you can use to get in the habit of your team, actually finishing work before they start new work. Okay, that is really key for being responsive, keeping things moving. That's $399. It's mainly for managers. The format is you get Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. You get an email in your inbox from me. It explains what you're going to do exactly that day. It has some video content too, and then you're invited to the weekly group call too with the other people who are in that in the completed ticket challenge. You can bounce questions off them and get some feedback on what you've been doing. So that's completed ticket challenge. That's $399. But what the offer is here is, like, I want you to not have to choose about those. Like, I want you to just give them both to you. And so for that, I'm going to give you both of those together for $299. That's basically you get the completed ticket challenge for free. In order to do that, you go to topleft.team. You know what? I'm going to bring it up here. topleft.team/topleft trial. You're going to choose whether you're ConnectWise or Autotask, and then you're going to pick this option here. Complete a ticket challenge trial with the concierge onboarding, and then you are going to put in this promo code projects-2209, and that is going to give it to you for the for just $299. Okay, so basically you get the completed ticket challenge for free. Okay, yeah, so you're gonna get $299. Okay, so then you get the 1 hour call. Usually it's me that does it, and I'll help you through setting up your boards first of all, and then you'll get the completed ticket challenge. So that is that's our offer to help you get started with these techniques really, really fast. So yeah, I want to say thank you for coming. I know, so we're right at the hour here. If you have time, if you can stay, I am happy to answer some questions. I really appreciate the time that you gave me today, because I know that you got 100 things you could be doing. So I hope this was helpful. You please do feel free to put some questions in either the chat or the Zoom questions section. By the way, I didn't mention this, but it's all recorded. I'm going to send you an email when we post it. Probably could be today or early tomorrow. I'll send you an email. You can watch the recording or send. I probably don't want to watch it again, do you? But send off the recording to some of your colleagues who might benefit from this as well. And yeah, definitely appreciate if you do that. So I will stick around for a few minutes if you put questions in the chat box there. Some of the actually, there is one. So, Marlene, are you still here? Yeah, Marlene, you're still here. You had said Agile does not fit in with the fixed cost projects. You, I think maybe you, sometimes there's some misunderstanding about what Agile means. Agile doesn't necessarily, it's not a free for all. Like Agile, so we do specifically say Agile, we do a little bit less planning, but the bits of planning that we do less of are the parts that were, like, if you're really honest with yourself, didn't work before anyway. Okay, so we're getting compared to, real like waterfall sort of like, scheduling out everything, how you think this project is going to go. The parts of Agile, we keep the parts that work and reject the parts that don't work. Okay, and the parts that don't work of the, like, hey, let's plan everything out strictly, was some of the stuff that I already mentioned. Is just that this idea that you can just set the dates that you're going to do everything for this project, that's a bit of a fantasy. Like, and because we know that just because you set them out and that's your plan, but that does not mean that it's going to go like that, because there's a hundred ways that your like that things can change. I mean, for like even just the project can change, because as you get into it, you increase the scope or whatever. Because the scope like never decreases, right? It only ever increases. You find out, you almost never find out that things were easier than you thought. There almost always you find out things were harder than you thought. But it's not just with the nature of the project. Like, things can change with the nature of your team. They can, somebody quits, somebody gets sick, their kid gets sick. Like, even, like maybe, parents pass away and they've got to go take 2 weeks off for that, like, so there's so many ways that things can not go according to plan, and that means you need to be reactive. Like, that just kind of demolishes the plan you had at the beginning, and then that here's the problem, that uh, all that work that you did for the planning is just wasted now. So we would say, if there are ways to get the same benefits that you would get from all of that detailed planning, but without the drawbacks, then that's what Agile is. By the way, I'm going into this in a lot of detail because I don't see any other questions yet, so I'm doing a deep dive in this. But I'll finish this up if someone puts in some other questions that I'm certainly happy to answer. So basically what Agile is just accepting the fact that just because we plan things out does not mean that they're going to go like that, and then we've wasted that work. So how can we still get the control over the project in order, basically, how do we get those benefits without getting all the drawbacks? So the kind of the idea there is that we will always be doing what's the most important. So as an example, let's say that for some, like, we committed, we told a customer, okay, we're going to have your project finished by the end of September. Okay, things happen, whatever happened, we can't do that now, but we know that we're not going to be able to deliver that project 100%. It's impossible for whatever reason. But as long as we're agile, we would have always been managing up until this point to be doing the most important part of the projects first. Basically, because in any project, there's going to be some parts that are really important to the customer and some parts that are less important. And so we don't want to be managing in such a way as that, like, we get to maybe we get to the end of September, maybe it's only half done. Okay, we want to be able to tell the customer, well, I mean, obviously you're communicating this to them well in advance, so they're not surprised. But when you get to September, end of September, you want to be able to say, okay, look, you know all of the things that happened. We only finished half your project, but we finished the half of the project that is going to have the biggest impact for you. Okay, the part that we, because we were talking to you, we knew that this was the most important half of the project. We still have half of the project to we obviously we still have half that we got to do, but that we know that that was the half that was less important to you. And so that's kind of two benefits that you can do to basically, even if you can't deliver everything, you can still keep your customer pretty happy. Is if you do the most important, you actually do deliver the most important, the biggest impact things first to them. And then the second thing is that you keep them up to date frequently, which Kanban is also really good at, because then you can see that there's certain problems with certain tickets, so you can see that well in advance, and you can see um, uh, yeah, so you can use that board to to the communicate to them well in advance that, hey, like we foresee that we might have some problems, so that they're you get to the end date and it's not all of a sudden they're surprised that you're only halfway done. Guys, I forgot something. I can't believe I forgot this. I forgot to mention this. We have a cool new feature. So hey, congratulations for staying around a little bit. Let me take 1 minute to tell you about this. We have a new feature, the client portal. That is something that we're just kind of, we launched it a little bit ago. We're still doing a little bit of work on it, but it's ready to use. We do have customers who are using this already. The client portal is basically, if you're looking at the Kanban boards and maybe you think, I'm running 2 or 3 big projects, and I'm always giving updates to the customers on how their tickets are going. It would be super useful if the customer could just check the Kanban board themselves. Well, if that is something that you've ever thought, or you can kind of see how that, if you haven't used it, but you can see how that would be useful, we support that now. It's called Client Portal. We do have, it is listed on our website now. You can find out about that if you go to all the way down to the bottom under features. There's a section now on client portal. So that is a paid option. So you'll pay per company for that you want to use it. So it's probably not the sort of thing that you would give to like every single customer of yours. What you probably, the model would be, we have capacity to run 4 big projects at once. Okay, so that's going to be with 4 different customers, and so we're going to, maybe we'll buy like 4 licenses to Client Portal. So, and for those 4 customers can look at those Kanban boards themselves, so they're always up to date. They don't have to always be asking me what's going on with this ticket. They can even there are options to enter notes. Yeah, so they can enter notes. Actually, we just introduced this. You can even set it up so that they can, if you want to permit them to do this, they can actually drag the tickets between the columns themselves if you want. For example, if something is waiting on them, and so they can have a place to see that, hey, these are all the things that are waiting on them, and when they do that, they can enter a note, and then they can drag it to the next column so that you know that it is that there's been a change. And so it's $30 for a customer license. So that would be for one company. Within each company, you can invite any number of the people that you want there. So maybe if you're working with a team of 3 people, go ahead and invite all three people. You just need the one client portal license for that. And then you can always, just like with the user licensing, you can always you can unlicense a user, and then you have a free license, and you can invite the next company once you finish the project. And you unlicense that company, you start a new project for some other company, and you license them just with the same number of licenses that you already had. So that is kind of how that works. And I don't see seeing no other questions now. Then I will wrap it up. So again, thank you for coming. Really appreciate the time that you spent here. So if you have any questions at all, then you can either email me, matt@topleft.team, or you can just click get a demo here. And that will get you into the calendar of our sales guy, Jim, and you can schedule just like a 15-minute call with him and get all your questions answered and start figure out what you need to do to use this and start solving your project management problems. Make that really easy. So again, thank you. I'll send out a link for the recording within about 24 hours, and I hope you have a great day. Appreciate the time that you spent here.